Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just chill. Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Live life. Live fully.
Hi, good to have you on the show today. My name is Omobola Stephen, and welcome to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Now, let's talk about motivation. Let's talk about positive mindset. That's very important, especially in this Asian time. I have a guest on the show with me today, Terry Tucker. He's a motivational speaker and an author. He's going to be discussing much more about positive mindset in spite of any health challenges. Welcome with me on Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen, Terry Tucker.
Thanks, Omobola. I'm excited to be here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming around.
Thank you for having me.
Who is Terry Tucker?
Who is Terry Tucker? That's a good question. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version, the short version of it. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm the oldest of three boys. I'm 6'8" in height. I have a brother that's 6'7", who was a pitcher at the University of Notre Dame. And then I have another brother who's 6'6", who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association. And then my dad was 6'5". So if you sat behind our family in church growing up, there wasn't a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on, because we're going to block the whole view for you. I attended college at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina on a basketball scholarship, despite having 3 knee surgeries in high school. And when I graduated from college, I moved home to find a job. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and I was all set to make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. And I look back on that now and think, gee, I didn't know anything back then. I was still a child. I really had no life experience. But fortunately, I was able to find that first job. I was in the marketing department of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain. But unfortunately, I ended up living with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my grandmother and my father, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. My wife and I have been married for 27 years, and our daughter is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is a lieutenant in the United States Space Force. But in 2012, my courage, my faith, and certainly my resolve were put to the test when I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer.
Thank you so much, Terry Tucker, for that introduction.
You're welcome.
Can you tell me about motivational check?
Sure. One of the things that I did in my life is I was a police officer, and Motivational Check is a website, is a blog that I have that, I had my left foot amputated in 2018. And as I was recovering and healing, I was kind of looking for something to do with my life. I really didn't have anything going on. I had no goals. I had no dreams. I really didn't know where I was going. And I would lay in bed every night and I would literally look at the ceiling and ask God, what do you want me to do next? Where are we going from here? And I was really kind of hoping that the heavens would open up and I would get the voice and, you will do this. And then that never happened. There's kind of an old joke that I heard a long time ago that says, when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. It doesn't happen that way. But the way it happened for me, the way Motivational Check happened was people suggested, hey, you should start a blog, or you should write a book, or you should. And I kept thinking, I'm barely able to turn my cell phone on in the morning, not alone develop a blog. So eventually enough people said it to me that I kind of figured that was God's way of getting me to do what he wanted me to do. And Motivational Check, the name itself, came from when we were recruits in the police academy and we were learning to be police officers. we went through a lot of really difficult training, hard training. And if somebody was having a bad day, or if somebody just didn't think they could go on, they would just yell out Motivational Check. And the rest of us would respond with our class number. We were the 84th recruit class in the police academy. And so we would just yell out 84 to let the person know that, hey, you're not alone. We're here with you. We're struggling just like you are. So hang in there and we can all do this together. So I remembered that and I thought, man, that'd be a pretty interesting title or name for a blog. And so that's kind of where Motivational Check came from. And every day I post a thought for the day. On Mondays, I post the Monday morning motivational message, the 3 M's or 4 M's. I can't get it out quickly. And I have different stories or videos or ideas, and they're all short. They're very short. I've made a decision not to have a video over 15 minutes on the site. Most of them are 4, 5, 6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most, because I know people are busy. But I want something that they can go to quickly, get a little bit of motivation, and then go on with their day. So that's kind of how Motivational Check came about.
Great. Thanks for letting me know. Thank you so much. So during our earlier conversation, you said, and I quote in your word, like, we will all have health problems and die, but none of us will truly live. Introspective, though, but I want you to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think, we're all going to die. I mean, every single one of us, regardless, for some of us, it's going to be next week. For some of us, it's going to be, 60, 70, 80 years from now. But not everybody lives. And that was one of the things that, and I've had a lot of experience. I've been fighting this cancer for almost 12 years now. And as I said, I've lost my foot. Earlier this year, I lost my leg above the knee to the disease. I'm on chemotherapy now for tumors in my lungs. And people look at me and they think, oh, you're going to die. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to die. So are you. But I look at it like, if you can find your purpose, if you can find the reason that God put you on this earth, and I always look at people and I ask them to just sit back for a minute and think about this. There has never been a human being before you. There will never be a human being after you who has your unique gifts and talents. And if you think about that, that is incredibly overwhelming, that our creator, whoever or whatever you believe that entity to be, gave you unique skills, unique abilities to make his or her world, however you want to look at it, a better place. And I've seen, unfortunately, as a police officer and with the number of years I've been battling cancer, I've seen a number of people die. And it's been my experience that the people who die what we would call happy deaths, those are the people that found and lived their purpose. Conversely, the people who go kicking and screaming, who want another day or another month or another year, those are the people who never did anything with their lives. They never saw the reason for their purpose. And there's a Native American Blackfoot saying that I really like, and it's very simple, and it goes like this. When you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. And if you keep that in mind, you think about that, that's the only way to do that is really to find and live your purpose. And that has really been I guess for lack of a better word, a passion of mine since I've had cancer. And the one thing that I always talk to people about, I said, Mark Twain, the great novelist, he had a quote, and I always tell this to people. He said, the two most important days of our lives are the day that we're born and the day that we figure out why.
That's
and
right.
I ask people, do you have any idea, especially when I talk to groups, do you have any idea why you were put on this earth? And sometimes I'll take that a step further and I'll ask them, why were you born at this time? Why weren't you born 4,000 years ago or 25,000 years in the future? there's a reason that you were born, and that reason involves finding and living your purpose. Now, I believe that we are all destined to live uncommon and extraordinary lives. And that has nothing to do with what kind of job we have, how much money we make, what kind of car we drive, where we live, etc. We are not all born with the same gifts and talents, but we all have the ability to become the best person that we're capable of becoming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of I'm talking about this purpose of a thing, how can a person conquer all that stands in the way of his or her purpose?
So, it's funny because I think the biggest impediment, the biggest obstacle for us to live and find and live our purpose, that obstacle, it's really easy. That obstacle is us. We all know this. Our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. To our minds, the status quo is comfortable and familiar and should just be left alone. Let's take a quick example. Say somebody looking for a new job. We all know people who are stuck in dead-end positions. They should have been working somewhere else years ago, but for some reason, they continue to stay put. Why is that? I'd suggest it's because every time they decide to find new employment, their brain kicks in and starts pointing out all the reasons they should stay where they are. Things like, hey, you're making good money and you're accustomed to the routines and the work is easy here. And you know what? You go somewhere else, you may not get along with your coworkers at a new company. Whatever the reason, to the brain, a new job presents all types of uncertainty and uncomfortableness. If you're in a job that you can't stand and it would make sense for you to explore new opportunities, your brain will fight you on making that change. And this is an important thing, so I'm going to say it twice. The problem with most people is they think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. Let me say it one more time. The problem with most people is they think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. We don't like to live in an uncomfortable state, but that's the only place where real growth can occur. When I was coaching high school girls basketball, I used to constantly remind my players that they needed to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And as such, I'd move them in and out of drills and practice that I knew caused them anxiety. I wanted them to be uneasy, not because I was trying to get them to fail, but because I wanted them to realize they could succeed at something that made them apprehensive. The only way we can grow, the only way we can push past our comfort zones is to do what we find unpleasant and undesirable. It's in those painful, difficult, and let's face it, sometimes embarrassing moments that real growth can occur. And when improvement happens, that's when the common can become uncommon and the ordinary can become extraordinary. Now, I want to leave you with this one quote here, and I'm really going to date myself. In 1976, there was a U.S. gold medal winning Olympic swimmer by the name of Shirley Babashoff. And she had one of the greatest quotes I ever heard. And this is what she said. She said, winners think about what they want to happen, and losers think about what they don't want to happen. Winners can override their brains and focus on the things they want to occur. Losers focus on the negative aspects of competition and aren't able to see the positive qualities of pursuing a goal or a dream. Most people will never get to where they want to be because they won't stop whining and complaining about where they're at. If you want to lead an uncommon and extraordinary life, the only way to make that happen is to embrace the uncomfortable and continue to do the things that you don't like and that you don't want to do. To become successful, your purpose has to be bigger than your pain.
Right. Thank you so much for that. To become successful, your purpose had to be bigger than your pain. Great.
Yes.
Nice one. Now, how can one embrace pain and suffering in order to be stronger? Do you have any experience to share?
I certainly do. I have a Post-it note on my desk, and that Post-it note has 3 sentences written on it. And I'd like to share those with you because I see that every day, all day when I'm at my desk. And the first one is this: you must control your mind or it will control you. The second thing is embrace your pain and suffering and use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual. And number three, as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. So people ask me, just like you have, how do you have all this pain and suffering? I was on a drug called interferon for 5 years, almost 5 years, 4 years and 7 months after I had the cancer initially cut out of my body. And that drug gave me the flu, gave me flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week. And if you can think about that, I was on this drug for over 1,660 days. Imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. Now, people ask me, how did you survive that? And what I took that pain, I took that suffering, I took that misery, and I didn't run from it. I turned it inside. I used it as energy or fuel or whatever you want to say to make me stronger and more determined. Now, then don't get me wrong. There were days that I felt so poorly and I was in so much agony that I prayed to die. But every day I found a way to wake up and use that pain and suffering to make me a stronger and more determined individual. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. I mean, most people don't like to be in pain. But if you're in enough pain, you can turn that pain inside and use it as fuel to make you tougher, to make you more determined, to make you stronger. We're all going to go through pain in our lives. You know, I'm trying to remember, there's a great quote, and if I can remember this, I thought it was, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So it's all what you do. If you know you're going to have pain in your life, it doesn't maybe physical pain, might be emotional pain, might be mental pain, but you use that pain and you turn it inside. Like, you know what? Now, and I got fuel. Now I got something to motivate myself and make it happen.
That's right. So the mind, how can we control it? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, by what you put in it. You know, if you look every day, if you look at a situation, I've been on a experimental drug treatment, a clinical trial. I started last week, and it was one of the hardest things that I've ever experienced in my life. I get this drug for 30 minutes, and about 2 hours later, I am terribly nauseous. I have a headache. My body is uncontrollably shaking. I mean, last Friday, I shook so bad that I dislodged the IV needle in my arm. That's how bad my body was shaking. They can't get a good blood pressure in my arm because my body is shaking so much. And that's probably the closest to hell, if you'll pardon my friend, that I've been through. And I've been through a lot of pain and suffering. But I had a nurse come to me and she said, you know, Terry, we wouldn't think anything less of you if you quit this. And I looked at her and I said, I'll never quit. I'll never quit this. I may die doing it, or they may pull me off of it because it's too hard on my body, but I'll never quit it because I use that pain. I use that suffering. I use that ugliness when I'm throwing up and there's snot coming out of my nose and I just look like death warmed over. I'm pale and everything. I use that and I flip it inside. And I start telling myself, you can do this. You can do this. And you do that 1 minute at a time. If you start thinking, I could potentially be on this treatment for a year. If I start thinking about that a year from, I got to go through this every other week for a year. I got to go through this pain and agony and that's too much for the mind to handle. You got to say, you know what? I got today. I got this hour. I got this minute. I am going to suffer through this for a minute. And then you know what? If I'm still suffering, I'm going to suffer for another minute. And eventually, it's going to get better. Everything gets better, you know, regardless. Eventually, you give something enough time and it will get better. We used to say as a police officer, you give something enough time, eventually all the runs will go away. Things that we have to go to will go away. There won't be problems anymore. But that's what you tell yourself. If you're telling yourself, I can't do this, whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be like me fighting a disease. It could be, you know, I want to write a book, or I'm not doing well in school, or I want to ask that man or woman out, but I'm afraid, I'm scared. You know, I could never do that. People tell me I could never be a police officer. Well, with that attitude, you're right. You couldn't. If you keep telling yourself, I can't do something, yeah, you're right. You can't do it. I mean, if you're looking at that, if you're looking for that, you're right. You can't do it. But if you tell yourself, I'm going to try, I'm going to give it my best shot, at least if you fail, you're going to walk away feeling better about yourself because you tried. I always tell people, if something scares you, if you're thinking about doing it and it scares you, then do it. Don't walk away from it. If it scares you, go ahead and do it, because when you come to at my point in your life, when you come to the end of your life, the things that you regret are not the things you did. They're the things you didn't do. They're the things you didn't try. And if you can get past that and say, I'm going to try. You know what? I wasn't successful at it. Okay, that's fine. I went to law school for 2.5 years. I never finished. I actually flunked out. But you know what? I feel better that I tried, because at least I know I gave it a shot. I didn't make it. That's okay. At least I tried. And I learned some stuff while I was there.
Thank you so much, Terry Tucker. It's been Lawale Omobola Stephen. I've been having a deep motivational discussion with Terry Tucker, who is a motivational speaker and an author. Now, you recently wrote a book on sustainable excellence. Can you tell me more?
Sure. I wrote a book, and when we were talking off air beforehand, I told you I'm not a writer. This is the first book that I've ever written. And literally, I wrote this book between the time that I had my leg amputated in April and the time I started chemotherapy in June. And I always say, yes, I wrote the book, but I really feel it was motivated or inspired by God. God said, you know what? This stuff needs to get out. I want you to write this stuff down. And so I did. And it really is a book that's born out of two conversations I had. One was from a former basketball player of mine who moved to Colorado, where I live now. And her and her boyfriend have had dinner with my wife and I several times. And I told her, I said, I'm really excited to have you here in Colorado so I can watch you find and live your purpose. And she kind of came back to me with, well, what is my purpose? And I looked at her and I said, I don't know what your purpose is. That's something that you have to figure out. And there are people that you and I both know, people who are like, you know what, I was born and I know I'm going to be a doctor, or I know I'm going to follow in my dad's business or my mom's business or whatever it is. They know that right off the bat. But then there are people who spend their whole life trying to find and live their purpose. And I told her, we have a restaurant here in the United States called Kentucky Fried Chicken. And the man who started that, Colonel Harlan Sanders, started that company after he retired. He was in his 60s when he started that. Now, I don't know if that was his purpose, but I have a feeling it probably was. And I told her that. I said, some people know right away what they're going to be in their lives. A lot of people have to search, but a lot of people give up. A lot of people say, you know what, I'm here. And it goes back to what we talked about with the brain. The brain likes comfort. The brain likes the status quo. Don't mess with it. Just stay the way you are. But you'll never grow that way. You'll never get out of that comfort zone. And so I told her, a lot of people just settle. And I call those people dead. We all know people who go through the motions every single day of their lives. They're not doing anything. They're just kind of existing. I call those people dead. They just haven't fallen over yet. And it's kind of a joke, but that's the way I look at it. And so I had this conversation with her, and then I had a young man connect with me on LinkedIn who wanted to know, he said, what are the things I need to know to not only be successful in my job, but also to be successful in life? And the first thing I said to him was, think about it a different way. Think about it not being successful, but think about being a person of significance. Now, you can be both. I don't think you can be both, but success is something we do. I was successful because I wrote a book. I was successful because I do a podcast like you do. I was successful because I started a company. Significance, that's different. Significance is, what are we doing to help other people? I'm a life, I have a life of significance. I'm successful, but I'm also helping other people. So I told him about that. So really the book was a product of those two conversations. And I started writing down things, because I didn't want to give them the typical, well, show up early and, learn as much as you can. So I wanted it to go deeper. I wanted to kind of get into your soul where you could really, these are principles. They're not emotions. They're not things that you look at and say, oh yeah, okay, whatever. These are things that when things are tough, when times are difficult, they will stay with you. They will be who you are. And so I came up with things. And one of the things was, don't find a job or a position. Find your purpose or your why. You'll work your butt off, but you know what? You'll be a whole lot happier because you'll be doing the things that God put you on this earth to do. Absolutely. One of the things I talk about was let's people think with their fears and their insecurities. And another one that I really like is you are the person that you're looking to become. So you want to be this person or that person. You are that person. You just haven't gotten there yet. Don't be afraid to do the things you need to do to get there. I want to do a podcast. I want to be like Omobola. And I'm like, okay, good. What do you need to do to get there? You want to be like her. You are like her. What do you need to do to get there? And don't be afraid to do those things. Take those steps, even though they scare you. Make it happen. I mean, I don't know how you were, but my first podcast, I was scared to death.
Scared at the outside, but it's worth trying.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what do you have to lose? What if you fail? Who cares? Who cares if you fail? Because you know what? You'll be happy that you tried. If you never do it, you'll always wonder, man, I wonder if I should have started that podcast. And you'll wonder that stuff at the end of your life when it's too late to do stuff. Do it now. Fail early, especially when you're young like you.
That's right. Terry, do you know what? I started my podcast with my mobile app and the paper. That's how I started the podcast. I downloaded the podcasting app on my phone, and I had a note. I scribbled down. That's how I started episode 1. So yes. I didn't have to wait till I have the recording studio or all the big things. I had to start somehow. But now look at where I am today. So you just
exactly. You're successful. And think about it. You made a great point. People sometimes wait, wait a minute. I got to wait till everything is perfect before I start this. No, you don't. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be good enough. Start it now. Start it, like you said, I downloaded something on my phone and I had notes on a piece of paper. You know what? Yeah. Not big, not sexy, but you know what? You made it happen.
That's right.
And now I can look at you. You're smiling. You're happy. You're doing what you're supposed to do with your life.
Right. Now I have recorded over 100 episodes.
So. Exactly. Look at that. From a piece of paper.
Yeah. That's what I started with. I had said that on my anniversary, my 1-year anniversary, I'm going to tell the story to the world. That is how I started. So at times when you're with some groups, because I know that I'm with some podcasting groups, you find some of them telling you, oh, how can I set up my studio? I have bought this instrument, or I don't have money for this. And I just tell them, you just have to start somehow with what you have. God asked Moses, what do you have in your hand? And Moses said, I have a rod. God said, with that rod, I'm going to do a miracle. I'm going to do something with what you have. And so that's how it had to be. You have to have something handy. It doesn't have to come big. With a little thing, God can do something big out of it. And that's how it has happened. And now, and Terry, I've been interviewing guests all over the world, but I started with a podcast app and the paper. So that's how it is.
Exactly. You understand exactly what I'm saying because you did it. You made it happen.
That's right.
That's great.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really had a worthwhile, time having this discussion with you. Do you have any projects you're working on?
Actually, I'm working on a second book that will focus. It's going to be 10 more principles, but it'll be more focused on what we just talked about in terms of success and significance. It'll be trying to live a life of significance where you're helping other people as opposed to just being successful yourself. And as I said, you can do both. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be successful and significant. So I'm working on that. My health is in question. Maybe I'll live long enough to do it. Maybe I won't. But you know what? I'm at least going to try it. And like I always tell people, whether I live or whether I die, that decision's way above my pay grade. So, somebody up top has already decided when it's my time. So I don't worry about that too much. And as I told you earlier, I'm actually kind of excited to see what's on the other side of this life.
Wow. I love your positive mindset. It's really contagious.
Well, thank you. I made a decision a long time ago when I got sick that I was never going to take out my misfortune on a doctor or a nurse or my family or a friend or anybody. You know what? I could be negative. I have a lot of things that I could look at and say, you know what? Life sucks and I've been dealt a raw deal. But you know what? I always tell the story, if I could end with this quick story. I've always been a big fan of Western movies, cowboys and stuff like that growing up. And in 1993, the movie Tombstone came out, and it's about two people who actually were living, breathing human beings. They're not characters made up for the movie. One is named Wyatt Earp, who was basically a lawman, and the other one was Doc Holliday, who was a dentist by trade, but pretty much was a gambler and a card shark. But the two men somehow became friends. And Doc is dying of tuberculosis at the end of the movie, and he did die of tuberculosis. He died here in Colorado. And the two men are talking about what they want out of life. And Doc says, I was in love with my cousin when I was young, and she joined a convent over the affair, but she was all that I ever wanted. And he looks at Wyatt and he says, what about you, Wyatt? What do you want? And Wyatt looks at him and says, I just want to lead a normal life. And Doc looks at him and says, there's no normal, there's just life, and get on with living yours. Would I like to not have cancer? You bet I would. But you know what? These are the cards that I've been dealt. This is my life. And I could choose not to play it, but that's not going to help anybody. Or I could choose to play this hand of cards that I've been dealt, and do things like I'm doing with you. Try to get some positivity, some love, some goodness out into the world. And so I think that part, that scene in that movie, there's no normal, there's just life. So whatever life you're living, whatever life I'm living, whatever life your guests are living, your audience is living, that's your life. You want to do something different, then do it. Then get up and make it happen. Otherwise, play the cards that you've been dealt.
Thank you so much, Terry Tucker, for coming to Lawali by Omobola Stephen. I wish you all the best, always, now, and always, and also staying positive.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. It's been Lawali by Omobola Stephen, and thank you for hanging around on this show. Let's do some other time. Till I come your way, I need you to stay safe always. It's bye for now.